then you see him on the mat. And it's like, holy shit.
I know. It's like when I had met Nick Bousakis, I was like, wow, that kid's who he is when you meet him off the mat. So we are live. Hello, Facebook world, the Florida Wrestling Room. Here I am, step to the line. We got Collin Palmer coming on here with us of Palmer Wrestling, and not too shabby of a wrestling career himself, four-time Ohio State champ in high school. He wrestled at Ohio State. He was the 8-time grade and middle school champ, 6-time Trinity Award winner in the Tulsa Nationals, 3-time Ironman finalist. He won the Super 32, the Beast of the East, 4-time MIT champ, and a Fargo All-American. And I'm sure there's more that I missed. He's now the head coach of his own club, CP Wrestling. And he also is the head coach now of a local high school down in Ohio, or up in Ohio, St. Francis DeSales. So I think I got enough about you out there. I believe you have family that are in the wrestling community as well that are doing pretty well. How are you? How's the family? How is this affecting your world?
Everybody's good, man. We actually just got moved into a new house, and we've been doing a ton of projects around here. So it's actually perfect timing for a little shutdown / break. But we are definitely ready to get back on the mats, man. We are a go type of family. So we're ready to get back after it.
That's awesome. So I know you won the Ohio State championship. You go off to Ohio State. You're ready to wrestle there. Unfortunate things go on. You get an injury, but you didn't let it kind of affect your world. You kept going, and now you've built something that's real solid there in Ohio. I know you're still directly in contact with those wrestlers that are on the mat at Ohio State. And we actually had you down here at CFWA last year. So talk a little bit about what you're doing, what Palmer Wrestling is, what it does for the kids, and what you have going on this summer, barring the doors get open again.
So, yeah, basically I just travel coast to coast running wrestling camps. And then back here at home, we have a club running 12 months a year. In the winter months, we usually do 4 nights a week. And then once we hit like spring, summer, and fall, we'll cut it back to 2 nights per week. We've been adding all kinds of stuff into the mix. So before we were just training elite wrestlers. Now we've mixed it up to add biddy clubs and some youth groups throughout, just to try to start that pipeline from the youngest ages and start funneling them into the junior high and then funnel them into the high school. So we're hoping it kicks off. We had about 20 kids in our youth club last year. We had about 80 in our elite club, and we just keep growing every year, man. Things are going good though. We got our high school going on right now at DeSales, and we're in the mix of rebuilding and trying to just revamp all the tradition that, has kind of fell by the wayside there. It's one of the winningest schools in Ohio history for wrestling. And within the past 10 years, it's kind of taken a dip. So we're just hoping that we can get that back up and running. As soon as this coronavirus takes off, we'll hopefully have some people coming on board with us. So
that's awesome. And your club has not only become kind of a feeder club for Ohio, you're starting to see a lot of Palmer trained kids all over the country, right?
Yeah, we're starting to funnel quite a bit of kids into, the NCAA. I started coaching probably about 8 or 9 years ago, straight out of college. Like you had said, I had a career-ending injury. So from there, I was like, damn, what in the world am I going to get into now, And then I just started coaching, and from there it took off. And now, I train kids literally all over the country. I get kids in Washington, Colorado, Iowa, the list goes on. And then we got Lang Ramey and David McClellan down there in Florida with you guys. So some of our Ohio boys spreading the wealth.
Yeah, but other than doing their thing.
Yeah, they are. They're good kids, man. I'm glad to see David having success down there. And Lang, he was always a character in our room. Those are 2 of our goofballs that you guys stole from us. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, my son and David have become, at least virtually, pretty close. I know they're texting each other when they see each other in the room. David always kind of gives him advice and helps him out. So my son wrestles for a local school, the First Academy, but he goes over to the club when the club's open, and those kids are always very welcoming. But David and he kind of kicked it off last summer, or when he came in, so it's cool. So you're traveling the country, you're doing that thing right now with your kids. I know you said you were doing some virtual stuff.
Yep.
How's that going? What are you telling your kids to do to stay not only healthy and ready, but mind wise? How are they keeping from just going crazy?
I mean, honestly, usually I'm pretty straightforward with my guys. I believe in breaks throughout wrestling, just so you don't hit that burnout mode. And especially I'm working with guys from 6, 7, 8 years old all the way up to 21, 22. So they all understand that the body, the brain, it needs breaks, to run at that high level when it needs to. So right now is usually our season where we kind of pull back a little bit, and everybody focuses on getting some freestyle wrestling in, maybe hit Tournament of Champions, just kind of keep the feet wet. So these are actually good months to peel back a little bit. As far as training goes, though, with the school being shut down, no sports are going on, obviously. We're hoping to see what happens within the next week or so with the state of Ohio. Hopefully they start, letting everybody get back to work and all that good stuff, and we'll get some training going again. My brother had a mat at his house, so I had literally just had him drop it off this past week, and as soon as May 1 hits, we'll be right back in business and getting some private training sessions going if the club remains shut down. So I always tell these guys, at least keep your feet wet at least one day a week. You don't want to do all that training and then sit, and then, you kind of lose what you gained,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think it seems like every coach I talk to says, man, I mean, nobody's really at an advantage right now. Everybody's in the same situation. So it's just kind of how you handle yourself being inside. Just like, I know my kids will do a little something just to keep themselves active and getting on the mat. I know. So your brother is a fighter too, isn't he? But he wrestled, but I think JC told me he was a MMA guy.
Yeah. So he was a 4-time state champ, 4-time All-American at Ohio State, national finalist. And then he took off with Uriah Faber into the MMA world. And
that guy's not that bad, huh? Uriah Faber.
He's not that bad. He's been in UFC for a couple of years. But no, honestly, Lance, I'm actually dressing a Barbie right now for my
that's
daughter.
okay. I understand. I
life,
it.
Dude. Dad life. But there you go. Yeah,
so JC sent me some questions. So your biggest obstacle as an athlete versus as a coach?
Oh, yeah. You know what? Speaking of that, I think I had this talk with JC before. And the toughest thing is, like, once you get to that elite level and you understand the sport, you understand the training, you understand, as everybody says, the process, taking your knowledge and instilling it into somebody else and instilling it into all different types of kids is probably the biggest obstacle. Because, like, when us as competitors, you learn how to cut weight, you learn how to do it. Well, most of us learn how to do it the proper way, so you can compete at your highest levels. You learn how to control your emotions. You learn how to control your sportsmanship. You learn how to, the warm up. You know how to compete. But then trying to take that and instill it across, for us, 80 kids, it's tough. That's probably the toughest thing, going from competition in my own shoes to watching my guys compete. And it's tough because you'll have half of the guys, they catch on, they understand, they dig it, and they're dedicated to it. And then you'll have the other guys who, they just kind of go through the motions, and they may not understand it or really catch on to it for a couple years. And, so that's probably the biggest obstacle. Just, I would say, like, the learning curve of all of the information that we're trying to instill in these kids, so the better they pay attention, sometimes if they're a better athlete or whatever it may be. I mean, I got some kids, they're not great athletes, but they pay attention and they're really good wrestlers. You know what I mean? So I would say that's probably the biggest obstacle between.
I'd imagine you learn different personalities too. I know I was in sales I guess I'm still kind of selling, right? But I was in the auto industry sales for 20 years. And I know the biggest struggle I had when I initially got into management was, why aren't you doing it like I did it? Like, I really had to learn how to adapt to different personalities and now take what I kind of did for success. So I'd imagine the same thing in coaching.
Yeah, not everybody's like Wolf of Wall Street. You know what I mean? Guy writes out the problem exactly what he said. Yeah, everybody's different, man. It's crazy. Like, for example, JC's son Lang, he was a kid who came in at a really young age. I think like 6 or 7, it might have been when we first started training with him. And he was a bigger kid for his age. So he'd always get tossed into the mix of these kids that were just hammers at that point. And he would just take a beating every day. And then now it's to the point, a few years later where he's stuck with it. He understands it and he's doing well. Things are starting to fall in place for him. So
yeah, not a bad group of coaches around him either.
Yeah, he's pretty set.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Florida wrestling and how it can become a national force like Ohio and Pennsylvania?
I'll tell you what, what I've noticed throughout Ohio is just the coaches that are consistent, the programs that are consistent do nothing but good for this sport, so I know it might be hard, like a buddy of mine, Connor Beebe, I know he had just came down to the Florida area. When you got brains like that and you got wrestlers of that caliber, I mean, you get a guy like him and maybe a couple others, and you got CFWA, and you just kind of keep branching that out. And then nothing's going to happen, sooner than 5 to 10 years. You know what I mean? So to build like how we are here in Ohio, all I think it really is just consistency. But it doesn't come from consistency of the coaches. It comes from the consistency of the wrestlers. So when I first started training down in like the Cincinnati, Dayton area. And the problem of putting a facility up down there was just nobody was consistent, besides a really small group of people. So I would say if Florida were looking for, to get on the same level and, to branch out where you have the depth like Ohio does and PA and, New Jersey, you just need the wrestlers, number one, and then you need coaches that, can kind of sprawl out a little bit throughout the state of Florida and just be 100% dedicated.
I've had some coaches like, like Coach Basil say, and it makes sense that your states like Ohio, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Michigan, whatever, have had 4, 5, 6, 7 generations of wrestlers where maybe there's only been 2 here. And as our kids now are getting through college and starting to have their own children, and we're starting to see that come back around, that might that'll really affect it as well. Do you feel the same way?
I agree 100% because we actually had this conversation about 2 weeks ago. We're discussing the Cleveland area over the Columbus area, and I know it's only a 2-hour gap, but you're 100% spot on. When you have the wrestling and the bloodline, the parents kind of know a little bit of the process, can help guide you through it a little bit better than somebody who doesn't have a wrestling background. So, just the depth throughout the Cleveland area compared to the Columbus area, you can definitely tell like that we're a new, like fresh type of wrestling world, so to speak, because you just don't have the depth like you do up there in Cleveland. I mean, it's just like grandpa wrestle, great grandpa wrestle, you know what I mean? It just goes on and on and on. And, down here in Columbus, we got a ton of like first generation wrestlers, which it's cool. It's just, you don't have that, the bloodline and the depth of, that just kind of keeps it rolling on its own. You know what I mean?
It's just kind of surprising because Ohio State is just it's a wrestling school, right?
Yeah, but you got to remember Ohio State really didn't take off until like when my brother was there. I don't want to say that and sound wrong, but you had the era of Tommy Rollins and people like that. But, national champs were kind of scarce at Ohio State until you had, the era of my brother and myself, and you had, the Stevers and stuff like that come through Ohio State. So, but before that, Ohio State was an okay wrestling school, and now it's just turned into, one of the biggest powerhouses in the country. So
Yeah.
it's exciting to see too, right in our backyard. We always send like our team to a dual meet or two per year just so they can, see that highest level of wrestling. And we'll always take them to like the Penn State match or the Iowa match. I don't like taking them to matches where like Ohio State completely dominates, because I want them to understand like you're not always on the winning end, especially when you're at the highest element of the sport. You're definitely going to get knocked down every now and again. And it's good for my guys to see that, because I like seeing my guys lose. Oh, I don't like seeing them lose, but I like to see them get knocked down mid-season, because it just burns a fire up under their ass and gets them ready for, state tournament, national.
I couldn't believe it when I think people, like normally a Florida college match you can find for $20 and you go and watch it and you're having a good time, right? And then I was going to surprise Daniel, and I wanted to take him to like Ohio State, Penn State, because he's a fan of both teams, and obviously he knows like the Clearys and stuff, and he's met NATO. He loves RBY on the other end, right? So I start looking for tickets, and I'm like, God damn. Like, oh man, you'll spend $400 or $500 just to get in the door, and you're not even sitting down close. You're up in the bleeders. So I'm like, man, this is like going to a Ohio State, Penn State football game.
It's craziness, man. And then Ohio State just put up that new arena that's attached to the wrestling facility, and literally there's no bad seat in the arena. And it's cool that Ohio State has built into what it was. Because, I mean, even when I was there, we were wrestling in that St. John Arena, a real old facility. I believe they hosted Big Tens there one year. But it's cool to see everything, developing into what it is.
Man, that's awesome. So I know that you have a boy and a girl. So what is it like parenting versus coaching?
Well, my son, he lives with his mom, so he's not here full time, but he wrestles. He enjoys it. I don't cram it down his throat. I would say by the time he hits about 8th grade, I'll start really cranking it with him and helping him out a little bit more. For the time being, he's just going through the motions and, developing somewhat of a style and trying to get himself to the next level. It's just hard to do that when he doesn't have a room like mine. If he was in a room like mine, he'd definitely be at a whole nother level. But at the same time, if you want the longevity in the sport and, try to stay injury free, so to speak, definitely starting a little bit later on the intensive training. I think that's where we're going to go with him. But with my daughter, she is, I got my hands full for sure. She is.
You're dressing up Barbies.
Oh my gosh. Then she wants me to go hang out and play Barbies in her room. It's like, we're dudes, like we don't really do things like that. I'm like, you want to go play sports? Do you want to do this? But so yeah, she kind of won me over, man. I'm dressing Barbies and combing dolls' hair. I don't even know what in the world's going on, but
you haven't put her in like a full half yet, or?
Oh, I beat her up every day. She's rowdy. She's rowdy, man. She's definitely got the Palmer bloodline in her. She likes watching Uncle Lance fight. I mean, I know we shouldn't probably be having her do that,
but that's okay.
She's in there. She's like, beat him up, Uncle Lance. It's hilarious. But she's a good kid, man. We already got her in gymnastics and in dance class and stuff like that. So she's been begging me to get on the wrestling mat. I just didn't know if I wanted that father-daughter relationship like that, but you never know.
To ask you about that, I know, and then I've got another thing here, but to ask you about that, I don't know if you saw, we're trying to get, now I have 2 boys, so I don't really have a girl in the fight, but I felt like since I got this platform over the last few weeks, it's been heard.
Right.
So I had a lot of girls come on, and they're trying to get Florida wrestling sanctioned. I know they haven't passed it. As far as in the country, I mean, how much has it grown? I mean, girls wrestling seems to be taking off. They should sanction it and give them the opportunities. And do you feel that way too?
I'll tell you what, I know it's the fastest growing sport there is. But when it comes to the girls, I mean, the way that they develop, and the only reason I say this is because I've trained probably 6 to 8 different girls, and the majority of them started with a background in jiu-jitsu. And when they came over to wrestling, they kind of had already a little bit of good positioning and this and that. And I just tossed in a little bit here and there, you know, a little bit of with their positioning and a couple pieces of technique. And it was crazy to see how quick they developed. And I don't practice them separate from the boys. I mean, they're just right in the mix and they're getting after it. And so far, so good, man. I think it's a great thing. There's a girl out here from New Lex. She's just tough as nails. She was on a couple of the U.S. teams. And, I mean, just watching her when I was running one of their high school practices, watching her positioning and her movement and everything else, I was really amazed because you usually don't see that kind of development in a wrestler until like a super high level. And I believe the first time I worked with her, she was maybe a freshman. And I was like, damn, this girl's going to be good.
Yeah, my son says, damn, every time you wrestle a girl, their legs are so strong.
Right.
They get a hold of you. You know,
yeah.
Their hips, their legs, the way they're so like, I don't know the word I'm thinking of, but they can really get around.
Yeah, they're tough, man. I mean, and when you put them in the same room with the boys, you can't tell a difference. You can't tell a difference. And usually the girls are a little bit smoother than the boys. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think eventually you're going to have a high school state tournament for boys. You're going to have a high school state tournament for girls, and it's going to be ran, you know, side by side.
That's awesome. And then let's get the champ from each weight to wrestle each other. That'd be fun, awesome. Right? Yeah, so a few stories that I was told to ask about. So of course you hung with the CFWA crew in Florida. Right. Talk about that. And then, so somebody said here, you know who that somebody would be. So talk about the many bar matches and wrestling bears.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had, so my parents, or not my parents, my dad had a whole zoo of animals. So I know everybody's seen Tiger King and all that craziness lately.
Yeah.
But Joe Exotic, I think that show's hilarious, by the way. I mean,
yeah.
Like we grew up and we lived in that type of world, you know, with tigers and bears, bobcats, cougars, leopards, lions, white lions, all kinds of craziness. And like, we just like go to school one day, we'd come home, there'd be an African leopard and a lion cub just sitting in our living room and be like, what the hell is that? You know, and we would like bottle feed them and raise them and all kinds of craziness. So we were like right in the mix of all that. And it takes like really quirky people to like be inside of that world. And then to see like a TV show to come out like that, I mean, they completely kicked it way over the moon with how it really is. But I mean, that dude was out there. But Doc Annell, we actually used to do some sports shows with him at the Cleveland IX Center. We're talking years ago, probably 15-ish, 20 years ago. And then obviously he blew up into like the movie industry and everything else. But so yeah, we were right in the mix with all the craziness with the animals and basically what they would do. So my dad would go around and they would do commercials. So for instance, they did a saran wrap commercial, and like to show how tough saran wrap was, the bear would have to claw through it. So the bear would come in there and like claw through the saran wrap and whatever else. But so we did commercials, sports shows, educational shows at schools. And then the craziest thing was we had the wrestling bear. So we had a bear that was like 1,200 pounds. This thing's head was just massive. And he was a grumpy bastard too, man. He was always just chewing people up, and they had full nails, claws, teeth, everything. And so people they'd eventually wear headgear so they didn't get their ears ripped off and all that. But just people would just get hammered at bars and sign up to wrestle the bear. And the whole thing was it was $20 to wrestle the bear. And if you pinned the bear, you win $1,000. So people were like, oh yeah, you know, 5 drinks deep. Next thing you know, you got this 1,200 pounds standing in front of you.
And how many times did the bear get pinned?
I think only twice in about 22 years. But it was awesome because the way you had to pin it, obviously their spine is like rounded. So like you can't lay a bear flat on its back. So you had to take its paws and push the paws flat. Well, in the meantime, you got their nose and snout like right in your face. So it was damn near impossible to pin them, but it was craziness, man. We go on these shows and then the bear would like go off on a rampage and take off down the bar, and you'd be chasing big ass bear through a crowd. It was like some of the nuttiest stuff ever.
Yeah, I mean, they were showing. I remember them showing videos of Khabib wrestling bears in Russia, and people are like, "Well, so that's how he got that tough."
Yeah, man, we were just raised in it. And I mean, at one point, like when my godfather passed away, he's the one who owned them all. He had like, I think it was 70 some animals at the time. And they were all the like PETA was coming through and just train wrecking people, taking everybody's licenses away. So it turned out to be, you could only use like wolves and like smaller animals and stuff. So like all the big animals were just kind of sitting, chilling. So it was craziness, man. It's every day.
That's unbelievable. That's cool. Imagine. I don't know what my 22-year-old self would have chose to do 5 drinks in a bar.
Right.
I know my 42-year-old self is big and out of shape, and I'd be like, a bear? Yeah, right. I'm not messing with that. That's cool. So, and then I know last year you came down being, I know you and JC go way back, and you came down and hung out with the CFWA crew, and I know you had a blast there. Talk about that.
Yeah, we had a good old time. I came in. I've known JC for quite a few years. We were introduced through another wrestling dad, and me and JC actually went into business before he moved. It was like an MMA gym, a wrestling gym, Muay Thai. It was a good mix of everything, and it was pretty nice facility. The facility's still actually up and running. Just the jiu-jitsu people had taken it over when we left and went over to St. Francis DeSales. But yeah, we came down there. We had a good old time, man. JC showed me a good time.
Here's my son with him.
Oh yeah.
So,
that's awesome.
Proof he was there.
Yeah, you know what? That was a week after I got back from vacation, and I had torn my pec. I was climbing I had hurt myself back in like August or whatever it was, weightlifting. And I was climbing this waterfall. There was this, what do you mean? Holy cow. So I was climbing this waterfall and ended up tearing my pec. So that was a scary situation. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it down there to the camp. And I was like, screw it, I got to go. Here you go. Here, throw this away.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I wonder, he doesn't do much of the coaching thing anymore, huh? He's just working with I see him down here hanging out and stuff on the side, but I don't really see him on the mat much.
Yeah. Usually when he was bringing Lang to me, he always would just either drop him off or sit on the sidelines. I think he does a pretty good job with that, though. He doesn't pressure Lang too much. He doesn't like drive it down his throat or anything. He just kind of, lets him be a kid and enjoy the sport and, take in all the values that you get out of it. And
he's given me a lot of advice because, I only would talk to him a little bit. I'd see him at the practices. Well, then I ended up leasing an office downtown like 2 weeks before this whole thing happened. And I was like, right. Well, it turns out he and Dakota are in the hall down the like 2 doors down from me. So then I got to really get to know those 2 guys and talk to them every day. And I would ask them parenting advice as a parent of wrestlers, because sometimes I don't know, and these are guys that have kids in the sport, have been in the sport. And JC and Dakota would give me a lot of advice, and it's kind of helped me back off a little bit too.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, if they came out with a book, I don't even know if they could, because every kid's different, but like, even if somebody like my dad came out with a book on how he trained us, people would try to stick with it, but the biggest thing was just consistency. And then keeping our minds off of wrestling was one of the biggest things that helped us. Obviously I came down with an injury in college, but keeping our minds off of wrestling was probably one of the things that helped the most, because you'd get your work in, you knew you had to do it. You knew you had to do it to keep at that high level. But at the same time, we were racing dirt bikes. We had basically a zoo at my godfather's house. So we were always staying pretty involved with every other. I mean, we played other sports like baseball, football, soccer, all the way up through 8th grade. So we just stayed involved in everything else just to, keep the wrestling portion fun. And then we came across quite a few groups of people that were, cool people throughout the wrestling world. We met David Taylor at a young age, so we'd room with them. We'd go out to Circus in Reno, and so things like that kept it real. But I see some of these parents, man, they just, they're trying to live through their kids, and it's like, man, if you would take 2 steps back, this would last a lot longer.
Connor Beebe is saying, get your ass down to St. Pete and train with them.
Yeah, buddy. Hey, tell them I'm supposed to be coming down end of May. Don't tell my girlfriend. But
nobody's listening right now, so.
Right? Hey, hold on 2 seconds.
Yeah, hey. Palmer's doing a real good thing right now if he's doing that Mats for Kids.
But what'd you say?
Palmer's doing a real good thing right now Connor Beebe's doing a real good thing with the Mats for Kids right now, and he's putting mats into kids' houses. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had him on 2 times talking about it. I think he's raised like 28 mats already and put them in kids' houses from Miami all the way up to Orlando and Jacksonville. And I know his brother was on Carson. They're starting to do it in Illinois too, but he said he'll send them all around the country. So
that's awesome. I'll tell you what, dude, Connor's a good cat. I think if that dude sticks down there, I think he's going to turn into probably one of the biggest powerhouses down there. He's got some serious knowledge, man. And then sitting in that Northwestern room for all those years while he was coaching, he's just a brain behind the sport, man. Like I was saying earlier, he's always a good buddy of mine, and he's a hell of a coach. And what's cool about him, and some coaches aren't like this, and I really appreciated it. I had a kid down there on vacation, and I hit up JC. I'm like, I was like, any chance of any clubs around this area? And, next thing you know, Connor Beebe's name came up, and my kid went over there and got some training in. He said it was awesome training. And on top of that, I don't even think Connor ended up charging him for it. And that's cool stuff, man. That's how it should be,
Yeah, good, man. Yeah. So we could talk forever, I'd imagine. But
right.
I keep seeing your daughter behind you saying, hey, this is my daddy, not yours. So can I have him back, please? Well, it's good. I know you're slowly trying to get at least the garage going before all to go out into the public. Before we leave, how do you think this is going to change the club atmosphere? Do you think that clubs like yourself are going to have to start like doing temperature checks and doing things when kids are walking into the room? Or are parents going to be allowed right there on the sidelines anymore? Is there going to be certain areas? I mean, what changes do you think this is going to cause?
So here's all the preventative that we're taking. So we ordered a thermometer, one of those ones you don't have to touch them. It just reads outside of the forehead. That's coming in the mail. As far as, our Governor DeWine, he was one of the first ones to shut the state down and all that craziness. So I think with us jumping on top of it like he did, I feel like it's going to be a slow opening, maybe, 10. I know the rule is looking at like 10 people in the room total. My thing is, I know a lot of parents are still working and all that craziness. You really don't know what's right from wrong, but as far as, getting the kids back to normal, I say, we'll take your temperature as you're coming through the door. Parents, stay in your cars, just try to play it safe wherever you can. But in the same terms, how blown out of proportion is this really? You know what I mean? I feel like, I don't want to sound ignorant or anything, but we got the whole world shut down, businesses collapsing. We got 15 restaurants here in Columbus that are planning on not reopening, and then a fellow graduate from St. Ed's, he runs a ton of different restaurants throughout Cleveland, and they're getting to the point where they're already getting on the governor about reopening. And, saying things like this isn't going to affect like the next month or two. This is going to affect, 6 months, 12 months down the road, and then really be closing shops up. So I don't know, man. Obviously we want to play it safe. It seems like this is attacking the elderly and people who already have a weak immune system, which my son is a diabetic. So, that's a scare for us. I still haven't even been able to see him in the past month because of all this. So that's kind of crappy. But as far as club goes, I mean, we're just going to follow whatever guidelines we can. And as soon as we can get back to it, man, we'll get the champions on the podium like we always do.
Cool, man. Well, hey, how do people get a hold of Collin Palmer, and how do they get Palmer Wrestling in their room? Or if they wanted to come to you, how do they get in touch with you?
So you guys can visit cpwrestling.net, or you guys can, I always just have people shoot me a call or text. I'm real personal when it comes to the training. I would assume this summer, hopefully things kick off in June. If they don't, I'm going to be doing a ton of traveling. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, my number's on the website, email's on the website. Just go ahead, shoot me a call or text, and we'll get something on the books. I wanted to come down to Florida. I think it was end of May, coming down for a golf trip. So if I can get that in the works, maybe I'll hit up Connor or JC or the Fretwells. I don't know if you guys know Bungie and Christian and all them guys, but they were up here in Ohio for about a year or two. So maybe we'll try to put something together down there.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on, and I know we're busy, but we're not busy. So
yeah,
thanks for coming in, and good luck with you, your family, your kids. I hope your son is fighting this away, and look forward to seeing him doing big things.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, it was fun. Anytime.
All right, you guys take it easy. Have a good day.
Yes, sir.